During my visit here in Dublin, I have taken my fill of the monuments and public buildings, but have been keeping a wary lookout meanwhile in the rag and bone interest. And I have found them. The rags, the bones, the sawdust and the dirt, which I was at first unable to discover in Dublin, but I have found them now. Not in Sackville Street, or Westmoreland Street, or fashionable Merrion Square, nor yet in St. Stephen's Green, but in the Coombe. Now, I did not know that the Coombe was the Coombe. And I staggered out of it again, dazed and bewildered from a labyrinth of streets. And the following, if I may, is an account of my having, well, staggered back in again. I found the Coombe running from the bottom of Francis Street and Ardee Street to Pimlico, and possessing vomiter rear seemingly innumerable in the shape of lanes, back streets and blind alleys, to be a thoroughfare with a strong dash of Brokers' Row in Birmingham, Newgate Market, and Petticoat Lane, but with an almost indescribable aspect of dirt and confusion. First, the old clothes. The Coombe's tributaries and subsidiaries don't teem but swarm, don't swarm but burst with old clothes. There's a shop out of 100 which is a mass of old clothes, so deeply heaped, so thickly sewn, that their proprietors, sitting amongst them, smoking their pipes, look like bundles of old clothes. Oh yes, they are little else themselves. Every imaginable article of male and female attire seems to be gathered together in this shop. The broken windows have old clothes stuffed into their shattered panes. The sleeping department is walled off by a screen of old gowns and petticoats. The wind is excluded by thrusting old stockings into chinks and sleeveless coats laid at the bottom of doors. There's an old shawl for a carpet, a remnant of some undergarment for a tablecloth, and old clothes for counterpanes. Oh yes, all the mortals that sleep in the valley of dry bones seem to have left their garments here. And you, ladies and gentlemen, may see yourselves retrospectively in that mirror of rags. Here in the Coombe are all the boots and shoes you ever wore. And there is, ladies and gentlemen, a reason for this extraordinary accumulation of old clothes, not only in the Coombe, but in every back street of Dublin. Oh, if you had seen what I have seen here in Dublin, at what climax of suffering and destitution these poor people were first reduced to this degrading strait is yet to be discovered, but to this day are content to wear second-hand apparel, but not only outer, but inner and under. The extraordinary exodus, which every year sends thousands of Irishmen from their native shore, creates a huge demand for second-hand wearing apparel. And some poor emigrant newly arrived without money or some wardrobe, however tattered, may soon go as Adam did. And some poor creatures are only enabled to cross from Dublin to Liverpool at the sacrifice of a shawl, a shirt or a waistcoat sold for anything that it will fetch. But I digress. Dear friends, I digress. It was the Lord Lieutenant's carriage which I stopped to see sweep out of the Vice-Regal Lodge in Dame Street, which was the cause of my initially wandering Coombe-wise. However, a personage somewhat removed from him in dress and worldly station was the secondary lodestone that pointed me to this particular pole. This was none other than a Dublin fishwoman, heavily disguised, rather undisguised in rage and alcohol, who was scattering the flowers of her eloquence broadcast on a female with a barrow at the door of a whisky shop. Now, the casus belli being a disputed question as to the right of property in a flat iron, here called a smooth. Yes. And if you'll pardon my attempt to replicate the dialogue, the conversation went thus. Isn't it the smooth that's mine? And, sure it's not a skirrick of it that's yours? Were bandied about for some time, until the dealer in mollusks, as in the manner of persons quarrelling, diverged from the original point to some previous griefs and torts. Isn't it yourself? Demanded this female Demosthenes. Isn't it yourself that daren't go to the chapel for be Father Macanassa forbade ye every brick of it? And isn't it yourself that came down to the corner of the coombe only Wednesday fortnight from inst the whole world and called me a mouldering old excommunicated gasometer? And with which latter trope she folded her arms and stared oyster knives at her enemy. Thus, ladies and gentlemen, concluded my few short hours in this quarter of your fair city, observing the continental picturesqueness, overpopulation and frowsiness, perfectly original and peculiarly its own.